This sounds a little bit melodramatic, but it really was as
No,
if
no.
something reached into my heart,
Yeah.
and uh, and I just knew that I was looking at the face of Jesus.
Hey there, Gracious Gang. It's Mike Creavey. Welcome back to another episode of the Gracious Guest Show, and we are returning to the topic of the Shroud. I have my little replica here. I'm in my classroom doing this real quick, just a little by way of intro, so this is exciting. Before we do that, please make sure you subscribe to the channel. Give this video a thumbs up, share it far and wide. It's really going to help get the word out about the Shroud. There's a lot of chatter these days about the Shroud, a lot of different things being covered, different topics, and you know that that's a very popular topic here on this channel, and I've got a lot more coming up, so definitely stay tuned. With me today is friend of the show, Michael Kowalski, joining me from the UK, one of our dear friends from the UK, across the pond, as we say, so I slipped in a couple of American jokes I couldn't resist. Michael lives in Halifax, Yorkshire, a town in the north of England. He graduated in physics at the University of Manchester in 1976, following which he had a short 3-year career working in the textile industry, subsequently changed careers joining a multinational computer company where he worked for 37 years, specializing in the development and implementation of core banking systems used by many of the UK's major financial institutions. Since taking early retirement in 2016, Michael has devoted much of his time to a study of the Holy Shroud of Turin. He is the editor of the British Society for the Turin Shroud newsletter, which I could not recommend more, and the author of a book about the shroud dating evidence titled The Shroud of Christ, Evidence of a 2,000-Year-Old Antiquity. We had Michael on before to discuss that topic in a particular way. Today, he joins us to discuss other aspects of the Shroud, as well as a little bit of the history of the British Society for the Turin Shroud, which a lot of people aren't familiar with. There's a lot of really intriguing aspects to that story, as well as their 50th anniversary coming up in 2026. So please welcome Michael Kowalski to the Gracious Guest Show. It was a real delight to talk to him, and I think you're really going to enjoy this. Check it out. Well, here we are again with Michael Kowalski. It's been a while. Michael, thank you so much for coming on the Gracious Guest Show again.
It's my pleasure, Mike.
Well, and nobody in this audience ever needs any excuse, I think, for Shroud-related content. That's for sure. So it's wonderful, and we've got a couple different things to discuss today. So I'll stop talking. I'll just turn it over to you as far as if you want to, maybe for those who aren't familiar with you, just give a little bit of your background, and we'll dig into the whole background here of the British. Is it the Shroud of Turin Society? I always get the order wrong.
British Society for the Turin
Society for the
Shroud.
Turin Shroud. That's it. Yeah. Right. So yeah, go tell us about yourself and that a little bit.
Yeah, sure. Well, I've been the editor of the British Society for the Turin Shroud newsletter for the past, well, it's coming on for 3 years now. I've had a lifelong interest in the Shroud of Turin ever since. I say lifelong, it dates back to the 1970s when I first saw pictures of the photographic negatives, and like how most people who viewed that was incredibly intrigued by them. And
Right.
but I took an interest rather than a detailed study at the time. I had a career to keep me occupied, and so it really is only in the last 20 years, in particular, to study and spent some really quite a lot of time on studying lots and lots of different aspects of the shroud. And
Yeah.
just in the course of that, came across the British Society for the Turin Shroud, which is a wonderful, well-established organisation, which I joined as soon as I could. So it's
Sure.
and it's that really which I'd like to begin talking about, really, Mike, because the BSTS, as I say, it's well established. It was founded in 1976, so we're very, very close to celebrating our 50th anniversary, which will be remarkable
Wow.
next year.
Well, and I wanted to mention, when you brought that up, that I think a lot of people forget sometimes that the interest in and curiosity in and actually even study of the Shroud didn't begin in 1978
Yeah.
with the Sturb team. So I think, why don't you walk us through that a little bit, maybe some of the origins of the BSTS and
Sure.
what role, if any, that they had in some of those early studies and involvement with the Sturb team.
Oh, yeah, certainly. Well, as I mentioned, it was founded in 1976, but the people who uh, really created the BSTS, there were some very prominent people at the time who were involved. People who'd been making their own studies of the shroud, had a certain amount of interest in it, um, and had started having informal conversations with each other, but then decided it would be good to have an organization where like-minded individuals from all walks of life could come together and learn more about the shroud collectively. And that's really what led to the formation of the BSTS. But one of the most prominent members, early members, was a man called Group Captain Leonard Cheshire. He was actually the honorary president when the society was launched. And he was a really remarkable man. He was one of the most decorated RAF pilots in World War II. He was awarded the Victoria Cross, which is the highest award that a serviceman can get in the UK, and it's an award given for extreme valour in the face of the enemy.
Wow.
He was so highly regarded that he was one of the official observers from Britain who observed the bombing of Nagasaki, which ended the Second World War.
Wow.
So he was quite an eminent pilot. However, it's really after the World War II ended, and after he finished his service, that some of the most remarkable things happened. And first of all, he apparently, I think it was 1948, came across a disabled man who was homeless, and he decided to invite him into his house. Within a year, there were 28 homeless, disabled people living in his house.
Wow.
And very quickly, he established a charity. He established a number of what became known as Cheshire Homes. The charity still exists to this day. And so became a remarkable man in that respect. But he also had an intense interest in the shroud. Interestingly, he was agnostic until after the Second World War. He converted to Catholicism in the late 40s, and then his interest in the shroud just became an intense passion. He actually published a little booklet, trying to raise awareness. It's called The Holy Faith.
The Holy Face, yes.
It was published in 1954, an account of the oldest photograph in the world. It's only a short 16-page booklet, but that was one of the things he did. He also bought a double-decker bus and converted it into a traveling exhibition. So he built it with life-size photographs of the shroud and various other artifacts, and literally just traveled around showing people what he knew about the shroud. And quite interestingly, I just discovered fairly recently that he's currently under consideration for beatification.
Wow.
By the Catholic Church. So
I hadn't heard that. I'll have to look him up. Yeah.
Well, I didn't know that until fairly recently. So who knows? In a few years' time, it could be that our founding president of the BSTS may turn out to be Saint Leonard Cheshire.
Wow.
That would be quite something.
Yes, indeed. Yeah.
Remarkable man.
Well, well, yeah, and that's I'm trying to think too, because that's around the 1950s. I forget the exact date when it was, but that famous the Doctor Calvary book that had been then written. I'm forgetting his name now. I should have that on the tip of my tongue.
Yeah, Barbie.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
So and so you have this. I feel like there was a really unique interest at that time, just based on sort of anecdotally, as I've come to be more and more interested in all of this myself. You have Louis de Wall writing these this sort of historical fiction books. There's this real, and the spear and the robe, and there's all this interest in these biblical times, and a seemingly a growing interest in trying to come to a more kind of historically accurate understanding of the sufferings of Jesus. I imagine that's that kind of worked kind of hand in glove probably with the interest in the shroud too at that time. And is that so?
Yeah.
Is that when we see some of the first historic, or I'm sorry, scientific studies being performed? Is
Well,
that correct?
it was
But
really, yeah.
preceding the STIRP team, if I remember, yeah.
Yeah, there was a study in 1973, which was a study by various different scientists. It was called I think they called themselves a European Commission, but it was nothing quite. It wasn't quite on the scale of the study in 1978 by any means. But
Right.
nonetheless, there were some remarkable findings that were made from the 1973 study. That was when Max Spray started extracting dust from the surface of the shroud using sticky tape, and first discovered that there were
Right.
various different types of pollens there, which I'm sure people have
Right.
already
Right.
spoken about on the program. But yeah, back in 1976, amongst the prominent members, there were a couple of bishops, two well-known bishops in the UK, Hugh Montefiore and John Robinson. Ian Wilson, who
Hmm.
I think people who study the Shroud will know of Ian Wilson. He was again one of the founder members, one of the most active founder members. And at the
Yeah.
time, in 1976, he was writing his first book called The Turin Shroud, um, which was eventually published in 1978 and became a worldwide bestseller. And of course, Ian
Right.
has since authored another 4 books about the Shroud over the years, amongst all the other publications that he's produced. And he's currently working on another book, which hopefully will see the light of day soon.
Oh
Um,
my god. Yeah. Keeping busy for
yeah,
sure.
yes, yeah, and one of the things that Ian did was he introduced film director David Rolfe to the
Hmm.
Shroud. His interest in the Shroud was sparked by Ian. Uh,
Right.
David went on from that initial meeting. He took Ian's own historical research, which was really quite groundbreaking at the time. He took an
Yeah.
interest in that and then decided to produce a film with the help, I have to say, of the Holy Shroud Guild, which was a New York-based organization
Yeah.
uh, led by Father Adam Otterbein and Father Peter Rinaldi. Uh, they helped David. In fact, they were executive producers for his film The Silent Witness, and
Hmm.
that was released in 1978, Easter 1978. That became a box office success worldwide, and actually won David Rolfe a British Academy Award, a BAFTA, for the
Hmm.
best documentary of 1978. And like Ian, David's continued to bring his directorial skills to the Shroud over the years. So he's produced another 4 films about
Yes.
the Shroud, including Who Can He Be in 2022, which was released in Easter
Right. Yeah, we
2022.
had him on to talk about that,
Yeah.
when that was first coming out, and it's I remember correctly too. He, like many others, when he first sort of approached the subject, he didn't, as is often, leveled the accusation that's normally leveled against anyone studying the Shroud, is that everyone goes into it with their minds made up and everyone's a religious fanatic and all this kind of stuff. And I think David would strongly disagree. I know
Oh,
Barry. That's not where Barry Schwartz was coming from,
no.
and
And Ian Wilson.
pretty much everybody in the STIRP team, from what I understand.
Yeah, well, Ian Wilson was an agnostic.
Right. Yes.
He
Yeah.
was an
Yep. Yep.
agnostic. David Rolfe, he was quite a committed atheist, was David. I think
Yeah.
he may well have told you that he refused to baptize his daughter. Eh,
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
but both Ian and David, by the time that they'd started studying the evidence that was emerging on the Shroud, they not only became to believe in its authenticity, but they both became closely associated with the church. Ian became a Catholic, he joined the Catholic Church, and David baptized himself and his daughter into the Church of England.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and I must admit, I find it really remarkable because I really do believe that through their books over the years, and particularly Ian's first book and David's first film, um, those have probably done as much as anyone. Those two people have done as much as anyone over the last 50 years, I think, to bring an awareness of the Shroud to the world. And I find it
Yeah.
amazing that it's almost like a road to Damascus moment for them, in that they they
Yes.
didn't believe, they encountered the shroud, um, and then they started their own evangelical work in promoting their belief about the authenticity of the shroud. I just find it really quite an amazing
Yes.
story. And as you say, I'm sure you've encountered many people and have had many guests who would uh, admit to exactly the same journey as far as their faith is concerned, and the role that the shroud has played in it.
Well, and this is a perfect kind of dovetail into something I know we wanted to get into here, Michael, because this I want to ask you about, your own take on this and anything you want to share about it. This relationship between faith and science, which is so often by the world split into these ne'er the twain shall meet kind of categories. They must not touch. There's no overlap. And often I do see in the comments, sometimes if I have a little bit of extra time, which I don't usually, sometimes I'll go into the YouTube comments, and you'll occasionally get somewhat regularly these unfortunately, I think, these comments that basically, oh, this is idolatry. I get that a lot, right?
Oh yeah,
The shroud, it's idolatry. And I usually respond, I don't know. I've never spoken to anyone who's worshiping the cloth,
yeah,
which
yeah.
would be idolatry. So maybe speak to that a little bit, the importance of honoring, I think, in a sense, and really taking seriously these anecdotal stories, right, of these folks who have encountered through this experience with the shroud, one way or the other, this very real transformation in their own life, where they have come to Christ, they've come to the church through it. Maybe you speak to that a little bit.
Yeah, yes, certainly. Well, I think the shroud seems to be capable of impacting on the hearts and minds of people in various different ways. Um, if I speak personally, first of all,
Please, yeah.
I didn't really need the evidence at first. I saw the photo, and the photo of when I read this short article, it was in a magazine probably in the mid-70s. And I saw the photograph of the face, photograph of the full length of the body, the photographic negatives,
Hmm.
and also a photograph of the shroud itself. And I must admit, as soon as I saw the face, there was an inner knowing. It's almost as if this sounds a little bit melodramatic, but it really was as
No,
if
no.
something reached into my heart,
Yeah.
and uh, and I just knew that I was looking at the face of Jesus.
Hmm.
Um, and interestingly, I didn't study the evidence in any great detail at the time, and of course, about a decade later, we had the carbon dating test, which shook the world. And I must admit, I was a little bit astonished.
Hmm.
But I think after a few moments of reflection, I just thought, no, I can't, I can't undo the feeling I had when I saw that image.
Right. Right.
So,
It
yeah,
had staying power.
it's had staying power,
There's
yeah.
some kind of, yeah.
And
Yeah.
scientists aren't always right.
Right. Well, and
um,
not some scientists are right and some are wrong, because I know that's something
yeah,
a lot of people miss sometimes. I've been intrigued by the accounts of sometimes it's almost treated like the teams who performed the radiocarbon dating, they were scientists, and no one else who ever investigated the shroud was a real scientist.
yeah, that's
And
right.
I think that disrespects obviously some of them, saying no, like, we spent a lot of time over the last 10 years digging into this thing, and
Yeah,
this is contradicting what we found. Like, there's something weird here. So
yes,
so there's, yeah.
I think so. So I think there's that experience that I've had and many others, and I've also witnessed people who come to uh, exhibitions of the shroud. I mean, Pam Moon, who's I'm sure also been a guest of
Hmm.
yours over the years.
Yeah, absolutely.
Pam has a fabulous mobile exhibition, which includes the full-size negative images. It's got a whole load of display boards, a huge um, enlarged copy of the Holy Face. Um,
Hmm.
I've seen people who come into that exhibition stand in front of the negative image and burst into tears.
Hmm. Wow.
speechless. And they don't need to say anything. They don't need to say what's happening. You just
Right.
know that actually just seeing that image has had a deep, profound impact that will probably change their lives. And
Hmm.
and I think that's where the way many people come to the shroud. But there are others who need the evidence, and
Right.
it's all. I think the evidence is absolutely incredibly useful because not everybody gets the feeling that I had, but quite a lot of people will become convinced about its authenticity because, frankly, there's so much evidence that uh, points towards it that it really is. It is difficult to argue against,
Yes.
and certainly that seems to be a path that has drawn many people who didn't have a faith to have a deep belief in the life, crucifixion, and resurrection of Jesus. So um, I think it's yes, it is interesting. I mean, a comment I often see as well is I don't need to believe in the shroud to believe in my faith, to have a faith in God and a faith in Jesus, and that's uh, I'm sure that's very, very true for millions of people around the world. But I think it's also true that there's millions and millions of people around the world who need a step up to be able to
Yes.
get to that position. They need something.
Which is nothing to be ashamed of either. I
Well,
think that's
no,
yeah.
no. I always think about okay, Jesus gave a mild rebuke to Thomas,
Mm-hmm.
when you know, when he said, "You believe, you have seen and you believe. Blessed are those
Right.
who have not seen but believe."
Yeah.
It didn't say. It didn't say you didn't believe. Away.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah.
You do not. You're not worthy of this teaching. You're not worthy of sharing my story. So, I think even Jesus in his lifetime demonstrated that yes, some people need evidence, and it's not a bad thing.
Well, and even in the Gospels too, he says, I always love the scene. I was just teaching this a few weeks ago when Jesus heals the paralyzed man. They let down through the ceiling, and the first thing he says is, "Your sins are forgiven," which
Yeah,
is, objectively, that is by far the more amazing thing.
yeah,
But we're weak, and he specifically says, right, but so that that the Son of Man has authority on earth to forgive sins.
yeah,
Also, this, like, okay, your paralysis is
yes.
gone too. That's going to be more immediately impressive to everybody. But hey, fair enough. Like, he's, so I think that's a gospel notion there. But with it, let me ask you, with
Uh,
you're talking about evidence here. Are there what's particularly sort of got you excited these days? Any new discoveries? I mean, or just even more information, more elaboration on some things that maybe some in the audience might
oh,
already be a
sure.
little familiar with. I know you mentioned a little detail that you had discovered along your
Yes.
website editing, but yeah, whatever you want to share.
Yeah. Well, just recently, the British Society for the Turin Shroud, we've launched a new website, and the backstory to the reason for this website, I'll talk a little bit about it if I may in a minute. But the
Yes, please.
backstory
I
to
have it
this,
linked below too. I should mention. I just always tell
oh,
people to check the links because we'll have stuff down there for them to look to or look at. So
oh, brilliant. No, what prompted this was some remarkable things that actually happened last year. Because really, ever since the radiocarbon dating back in 1988, when there were news headlines that went all around the world saying that the shroud is a medieval fake, ever since then, the amount of positive media coverage that we see here in the UK about the Turin Shroud has been negligible, absolutely hardly, well, just completely absent. And there's been
right,
some
right,
incredible research that's taken place over the last 20 years that's been published in peer-reviewed publications, but it's hardly made a ripple of impact in any of the major media outlets here in the UK. But then, remarkably, last year, um, there was some news coverage in the Daily Mail online newspaper, which I believe is one of the most read digital news outlets around the world. And this was a very detailed and very, very positive article, which was reporting on a dating test by Liberato De Caro, a wide-angle X-ray scattering dating test. Now, intriguingly, that test had been conducted a few years ago. The test report itself was published in 2022. And this is August 2024 when this news story came out. But it was
Right.
emblazoned across the Daily Mail online newspaper as breaking news. And just in case the people watching the podcast don't know about this test, Mike, let me just briefly explain it, because it
Please,
used
yeah.
it used a technique called wide-angle X-ray scattering. Liberato De Caro. He was a professor in charge of an institute of crystallography in Bari in Italy, and he'd been given some fibers that had been taken from the shroud by Giulio Fanti. Giulio Fanti loaned him these fibers so that he could perform some tests, because what Liberato De Caro had discovered is that it's the X-ray, wide-angle X-ray scattering spectrum. There are various different peaks that appear in that spectrum when you use it with linen or flax. Flax is the fiber that goes to make linen.
Right.
It produces a spectrum which is unique to that, unique to flax, and there are certain parts of that spectrum which certain peaks that reduce in size with increasing age. Now, what he discovered was that it's possible to calibrate a dating formula that enabled you to convert the height of the peaks and the intensity of these peaks to a calendar age, or an age of the number of days, or the number of years rather, that the flax has that it's been around since it was harvested. And he'd calibrated this formula using lots of different samples of flax of known age, dating back to 3,000 years BC. And having got a formula that he'd proven to be reliable, he decided to get hold of these flax fibers from the shroud and to date those. And what he discovered was that the spectrum produced using this method, it almost matched perfectly a spectrum that was produced by cloth that came from the siege of Masada in the
I was
first
just
century.
going to ask if he had compared it to Masada. Yeah.
Yeah. The profile is almost exactly the same, and Liberato De Caro, as his formula, came up with a first century date for the shroud. Now, that's one of several different new innovative dating methods that have been used with material from the shroud over the course of the last 20 years, because Giulio Fanti himself has used methods such as Raman spectroscopy, Fourier transform spectroscopy, and a mechanical dating method, each of which gave results which were much earlier than the medieval dates given by the carbon dating, and all of which gave results which were compatible with a first century origin. And
Michael, were those some of those last ones you just mentioned? I think if I'd read, are those among other things testing like the tensile strength of the fibers and just different things that can give? Because I think a lot of us, the laymen, don't necessarily, a laboratory might as well be like a sorcerer's shop or something to some of us. It's like, what are they doing in there? But that's just it's very intriguing that if you're trying to determine how old something is, radiocarbon dating, it has its place, but it's not the only way to possibly get some insight into that. Is that fair to say?
It's certainly the most well established. And the most widely used, and it's of course been around now since the late 40s as radiocarbon dating. So, and what we're talking about here are very new and very innovative methods. We
Sure.
don't have anything like the credibility, I have to say, of radiocarbon dating, just simply
Right.
because they haven't been as widely used. But I think when you've got 4 or 5 different methods, because I'm going to include now Ray Rogers' vanillin dating that he did, which
Right.
also gave a result that was compatible with the first century Irish. When you get 5 of these new innovative tests, and incidentally, one of the reasons why these tests have been made possible, and one of the reasons why they happened, I guess, is that carbon dating is destructive.
Mm-hmm.
It's very unlikely that the custodians, that the Pope will ever allow another piece of material to be cut from the shroud for
Right.
carbon dating, because it has to be burnt, it has to be destroyed. All these methods are non-destructive. So the spectroscopy methods, that can be used without actually changing the material at all,
Mm-hmm.
completely non-destructive, and it's possible to use them with the tiny fragments of material that some scientists, such as Giulio Fanti, still have.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so they really are remarkable results. But going back to the newspaper report, uh,
Yes. Yeah.
this appeared in the Daily Mail, and I must admit it was an amazing moment, because for 30 odd years I've not seen anything published that put the shroud in a positive light, and this was really it was an article that I would have been proud to have written myself.
I remember being near the beginning of the school year. It was just because, I mean, and
Yeah,
I was getting videos like videos that I had done, interviews I had done with folks, friends of the BSTS and other, shroud organizations, videos from, a year, 2, 3 years ago in some cases, that were just now all of a sudden, like, it's like
yeah.
all these people are going to YouTube. Wait, what's going on? So I
Well,
appreciated that too.
it was incredible, and amazingly, within the next day or two, it was actually this article was picked up and more or less repeated word for word by various different other publications, including some in
Hmm.
America. Uh,
Yes.
I mean, I don't know how that whether that impinged on copyright. That's it's
That's out of my ballpark, or that's, yeah,
yeah.
that's not
but then
above my pay grade.
but remarkably, then the Daily Mail, they didn't stop there. They actually had an interview themselves with David Rolfe, which they published a day later. They published some of the research that had been undertaken by Giulio Fanti. Over the course of about 8 days, I think they had 6 articles, all positive articles about the Shroud of Turin.
Yeah.
And interestingly, at the end of that week, I just thought I'll have a look at Google, because it's possible in Google to look at what people are searching for. And what I discovered was was that uh, during the course of this week, when all this publicity had been going on, over 100,000 people in the UK had searched for the Shroud of Turin, or related search terms, Turin
Yeah.
Shroud, Holy Shroud. In America, there was over 200,000 people just in
Wow.
1 week. So it was one of the top searches. Even Italy and Australia, there was 20,000 searches in Italy, 20,000 searches in Australia, or 20,000 plus, should I say. So it
Yeah.
was a remarkable week. And uh, I mean, I was so delighted. I never thought I'd see this day. But then I thought, well, what will people be finding if they search for the
Mm-hmm.
Shroud of Turin? And of course, the very first thing, if you do a Google search for the Shroud of Turin, the first thing that comes up is Wikipedia.
Right.
And Wikipedia, it's got, as you probably know, it's got a very secular approach to most subjects. And certainly as far as the
Yeah, and
Shroud of Turin, it certainly leans very heavily towards the view that it's a medieval fake.
I think if I remember correctly, it specifically. I want to check this real quick just for a second, because I wanted to make sure I got my reference right here. I think they very quickly in it go right to oh my goodness, now I'm drawing a blank. Who did the supposed debunking of the blood?
Oh,
Um oh
of the
goodness.
blood, or the image. Walter Macrone, you're thinking of?
Well, yes. So
Yeah.
because very early on they bring up Walter McCrone, and they
Oh, yeah.
just, yes, there it is. Yeah, so but they just, it's a paragraph, like it's the third paragraph, and it's just flat out like he proved it was fake.
Yeah.
And what I love is, so there's one paragraph very authoritative, right, on Wikipedia. I love to point people to the wonderfully, incredibly detailed 3 or 4 page email response, right, that Barry Schwartz, but this is just maybe a couple of years ago, and then it's on the shroud.com, but there's this great, very respectful, but very meticulous email from Barry about like, no, 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 no. And then, so that just shows, like you can put a soundbite up on Wikipedia, for either side, to be fair, either
Yeah.
side of this argument. But that's why it's so wonderful to have resources, like yours, of course, um, and yeah, and shroud.com,
Yeah. Well, I mean, the good thing is that shroud.com, but certainly whenever I search for Shroud of Turin, I always find that Wikipedia comes first, sadly,
Yes.
and then shroud.com. Fantastic.
Yeah.
And it is a wonderful website. But I must say, I think if somebody has just read a newspaper article about the Shroud of Turin, the first thing the first time they've ever come across it, and in many cases, I'm
Right.
sure that would be true. If you then go to shroud.com, it's wonderful for people who want to make a detailed study. But for somebody who is just wanting to find some basic information,
Yeah.
it's
It's a little hard to navigate for that, right?
it is, and
Yeah.
it's one of our committee members, our management team members, Justin Robinson. It was Justin.
Yes.
Have you had Justin
Oh
on?
yeah, yeah.
Oh yeah,
We
good.
talked about the coins and also the
Yeah,
Holy Grail and just some fun stuff with
yeah, yes. Well, well, Justin, it was Justin who said, really, we ought to be doing something that will answer the kind of questions that anybody who's new to the Shroud and has just suddenly stumbled across it on the internet.
Yeah.
We need to have a website that provides the kind of information that they'll be looking for. And so that's what we decided to do, and we launched it in Easter this year. And the
Yes.
idea that we had is that we wanted to have it pitched at a reasonably high level initially,
Mm-hmm.
but allow people to drill down into more detailed layers of information. So if I give you an example,
Yes,
uh,
please. Yeah, I'm going
uh,
through it right now too. It's wonderful.
the wide angle X-ray scattering dating test by Liberato De Caro.
Mhm.
We have a timeline of all the dating evidence that's been revealed by research, and that's one item on the timeline.
Mhm.
And it mentions it, and it gives the date that that wide angle X-ray scattering gives you. But if you click on it, it then takes you to a description of what that test was. Then there is another button that you can click to get into a much more detailed account of step by step what the test covered.
Yeah.
And then finally, it's possible from there to link to the published papers by Liberato De Caro and other articles as well about that particular dating test. So from a very high superficial level, it's possible to get down to the detailed papers. And we've tried to replicate that kind of design all the way through the website, but cover all the different aspects of Shroud research, from historical research through to the all the dating evidence, the image formation, what we've discovered about the image, and also, obviously, and very importantly, the correlation that there is between the accounts in the Gospel of John and the wounds that we see on the shroud, which that's been enough to convince many people who previously were agnostic to believe that this was the very cloth that wrapped Jesus himself.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm just
So,
trying to see if I can, just while I'm at it, because I almost forgot I have this ability. Let me see if this works here. Can you, I wanted to put it up here quick.
oh,
Can
that's
you
it. Yeah,
can you see that at all there?
I
And
can.
I don't use Riverside much for slides or for screen sharing, because I don't know what it just did with us. But just for a second, because I was, can you just tell me quick? Are you seeing it move when I do this?
I am. Yeah.
Okay, good. Yeah,
Yeah.
so that's just to give people a little taste of it. And like I said, I have it linked below. But you're right. I mean, it's just it's got these snippets, these sort of just basic uh, introductory kind of quotes and information. And I was just going through here, and
Yeah.
I got a little distracted. I said, wait a minute, I can show this quick because for example, I love this going by topic under research evidence, right, for forensic evidence, and like you
Yeah.
said there too, and being able to more on the textiles, more on the dust deposits and pollens, and you know, and then
Yeah.
further links, in there. So, yeah, so I don't want to give too much away here, but that's
Yeah.
definitely
Uh,
something people will want to check out because, I and kudos to Justin, kudos to all of you for recognizing something that I think, I mean, to be honest, I don't think I had really thought of like, wait a minute, this, to have a one-stop shop maybe for somebody like just like you said, who is newer to it or hasn't heard about this and is not sure where to begin. So yeah, that's exciting.
yeah. And of course, nearly all the links that we've got end up on
Yeah.
shroud.com, because
Right.
that is, and I'm sure always will be, the definitive repository of the research information
Mm-hmm.
that's been revealed by all the years of study that's taken place over the last century. And
Absolutely.
so it's, but I do think it just, as you say, I think it hopefully fills a gap that previously was there.
Yeah. Well,
But
actually, you know what, Mike? Let me ask you quick. I hadn't prepared this ahead of time, and I'm not sure how much background you have on this, but just it comes to mind here. One thing that I know I hear somewhat frequently in the in the comments section or in some conversation where people will bring up and kind of push back against authenticity is the letter from 1390 or so from, is it Bishop Darcy or Darcis, who wrote
yeah,
to the Holy Father saying, this is a hoax, and here's this supposedly referencing someone who had already confessed to it, and it was an artistic depiction. What's what would we say to that, or what are some of the counterclaims?
uh, well, I think there's several points in that letter by Bishop Darcy which have been questioned. Um,
Mm-hmm.
One of the things he refers to is that there was a detailed investigation, and that had taken place some years before, and that someone had admitted to his predecessor as bishop to having faked up and basically he'd been the artist behind the shroud. But first of all, there's no details, no records of any such investigation.
Mm-hmm.
So it does seem really quite extraordinary. There's no names. Um,
Mm-hmm.
one of the things which I found really quite interesting was the judgment that was made by Pope Clement at the time,
Mm-hmm.
because Bishop Darcy was basically saying we need to get these people at the church in Leary, we need to stop them going their cloth that they claim to be the shroud. And of course, Pope Clement, he basically said it was almost like a bit of a judgment of Solomon. I'm not going to stop them showing it, but I want them to stop claiming that it is the burial cloth of Jesus, but they can continue showing it. And he also said to the Bishop Darcy, do not complain about this again.
It's
So,
such like I have to laugh because it seems like such a pragmatic sort of thing, because
yeah,
you get the impression that I'm sure that the Pope is like, I got a lot on my plate right now.
exactly.
It's
Yeah.
like, are they is it causing riots? Like, okay, just tell him to stop saying for sure it's Jesus. And oh, well, isn't that though? Is it fair to say that's to this day that seems to be the Catholic Church's position, at least, that will basically will respect this. We'll even like we've even had recent popes visit the shroud, but the Church is very careful with how it. And I try to be too, for that
Yeah.
matter, in my teaching about this to my students. I say, look, there's the Catholic Church has not signed off on this, but it
No.
is it's open to.
Is
veneration.
it's absolutely true. They haven't officially declared it to be a relic. But then again, it's with anything but the most recent relics where there is an absolute uh, unmistakable chain of provenance.
Right.
From recent saints like Saint Therese of Lisieux, her
Hmm.
relics are often being displayed in various different churches and cathedrals around Europe.
Hmm.
And obviously, Saint Therese, she was still with us just over 100 years ago. So you
Right.
can be pretty sure that anything that is claimed to be a relic of her life is in fact truly that. Um,
Yeah.
but I think one of the things that the Catholic Church, which is true of the Catholic Church, is they've always been very reticent to award to validate uh, anything really. I mean, when you look at things like the visions of Mary,
Right.
Lourdes, Fatima. I mean, there's those uh, children, Saint Bernadette,
Yeah.
had to go through an enormous amount of pain. The Catholic Church was trying to shut her down, stop her going to the
Yes.
Mater Biel to see the vision, to see Our Lady at Lourdes. It was only many
Well, and
years
I
later.
hope it's not a sore subject to bring up to an Englishman specifically that it took them about 600 or 700 years to canonize Joan of Arc.
Oh, exactly.
So as well.
Yeah.
No, but I mean, there's things you have to was she legitimate? Was she? I mean, like they have to look at a lot of documentation and
Yeah.
which to be fair, getting back to what we said earlier about the importance of science and faith working together. I oftentimes in my teaching will point out to students that to those in the world who might say the Catholic Church is just automatically credulous about every claim of supernatural intervention. I'm like, no, it's not.
Yeah. Yeah.
it's it takes a long time usually to get some kind of miracle
Yeah.
approved or a relic or
Oh, it does. It does. And usually it's the scientists who study these things that are much more straight. Isn't it
yeah
ironic, really? Science and religion are seen as, have for so long been seen
right
as opponents, and yet it's scientists who are quite often much more willing to pin uh, their reputations to the mast of authenticity as far as
right
miracles are concerned and as far as the shroud's concerned. Um,
yeah
there's been some really quite incredible Eucharistic miracles that have been examined by eminent forensic scientists who are convinced that the blood on these hosts is real blood, and in some cases there's tissue there which is real
yeah.
tissue, often heart tissue. And
Well,
yet,
and often you see that when they've tested the blood, there seems to be pretty good evidence suggesting that it's AB,
yeah,
which lines up with the shroud too, which is
yeah,
interesting to me.
it is. It is,
Yeah.
and so the scientists are usually prepared to say, "Yep, we've tested this and it's valid." And
Mm,
quite often it takes years and years and years before the church um, approves it as a valid miracle, if indeed they do at all. But
yeah.
one of the things I've often thought about the shroud, and I've been as frustrated as anybody that the Catholic Church doesn't come off the fence and actually state what I believe several popes have believed.
Mm,
Um, I mean, certainly there's lots of evidence that Pope John Paul II was very much a believer that it was the authentic burial cloth of Jesus.
mm,
And I thought it was fascinating a few years ago when the COVID epidemic was, well, in Europe, it hit Lombardy, the Lombardy region of Italy first.
mm.
And that's where Turin was.
Yeah.
And I still remember the harrowing news reports of all the blockades that were being set up around that area in Italy
Mm.
before we'd even had a single case in England, and the
Right.
deaths that were occurring. I thought it was absolutely fascinating that the Shroud over the years has had a reputation for being uh, something that has protected cities. In Byzantine
Yeah.
times, it was
Yeah.
brought out when cities were in danger or when there were cataclysms. Now, what did the Pope do in 2020? He brought out around Easter time. He brought out the Shroud and had it filmed, had cameras trained on it.
Mm-hmm.
And this was at the height of the pandemic. It was when it was
Yes.
affecting all of Europe and most of Europe, and I think most of the world by that time was in lockdown. So I think whatever they officially say with regard to the Shroud, I think there is evidence that there is a belief that the Shroud is authentic.
Yeah. Have you heard? I don't know if I've asked you this or anyone this from the BSTS crew here, but I heard in the last year or so, I'm a fan of the Exorcist Files podcast. Father Carlos Martins, from she's from Canada, I guess, but
Right.
very popular podcast. It's a great catechetical podcast on spiritual warfare, and in one of those episodes, he was sharing from his case files of performing exorcisms for many years as a official exorcist. I'm not sure different dioceses, but he claims that and it was just chilling to hear. Really cool. He claims that at some point, someone anonymously had sent him, because I imagine you're not supposed to do this, but that someone had anonymously sent him like just the tiniest fiber or little tiny patch that they claimed was actually from the Shroud, and they wanted him to have it. And that he, basically passed it on, I think, to John Jackson to just spend some time with and look at and tell him if just based on his experience, if it looked like it could be legit,
Yeah.
because he can't maybe prove it. And he said that Dr. Jackson had gotten back to him and said, well, as best I can tell, there's nothing inconsistent with it. This very well could be, from the Shroud.
Right.
And that supposedly in a particularly difficult exorcism, Father Martin said that without, announcing to anyone in the room what he was doing or where this thing came from, he just, employed this piece of fabric he had on him that he believed was a piece of the Shroud. And he said that the possessed person immediately stopped all of the antics and went kind of uncontrollably into the posture of the body on the Shroud and
Wow.
ceased all the antics. And I was just like, okay. I was like, that, if there's any truth to that, that's pretty cool, and
Yeah.
there could be explanations for that people would bring up, or, even if it is a, could the demon know that Father thinks this is, but why would it do that? I don't know. So the point being, like, that's not dogmatic anything here, but if it is real, that's a pretty interesting and powerful testimony. I just thought that was wild.
It is. I've not heard that at all. That's fascinating.
Yeah. I'd love to hear more if he's got more details on it. He mentioned that in passing in this one episode. And I was like, wait a minute, I want to hear more about that. So, well, Michael, we only have a few minutes left. I want to make sure I give you some time here just in our closing minutes for, anything else you'd like to share at all that you wanted to, that we didn't get to yet, and definitely give you some time to share about this exciting anniversary you all have coming up next year at the time of this recording, at least. So,
well,
yeah.
I mean, first of all, one of the things I just wanted to mention really is that there's a wonderful quotation that I read that was, I think it was Ray Rogers, the STERP scientist Ray Rogers, when he was interviewed in 1978. He came up with a quotation which I think it's one of the best sentences I've read from from a Shroud researcher, and it says, he said, "What better way, if you were a deity, of regenerating faith in a skeptical age than to leave evidence 2,000 years ago that could be defined only by the technology available in that technical age?"
Wow.
And
well said.
I think that's absolutely brilliant. And I think that actually is quite an insight, because I really do believe that we're seeing that happening. Because over the course of my lifetime, here in the UK at least, there's been such a growth in secularism. Really in schools, outside of the faith schools, there aren't any assemblies anymore where hymns are sung and prayers are
Hmm.
said. Um, and I've come across teenagers who don't even know the Lord's Prayer, and
Right.
and and end up having a view that uh, anyone who believes in the miracles of Jesus is the sort of person who still believes in Santa Claus or the Tooth Fairy.
Hmm.
Yeah, so that kind of trend was really quite sickening. And of course,
Yes.
for years and years, we've had the view that you know religious and spiritual beliefs are all based on blind faith, not solid evidence, which is what scientific principles are based on and scientific theory is based on. That's based on solid evidence. And
Hmm.
so, you know, really, the scientists who have uh, an atheist agenda tend to belittle people of faith, really, as being almost weak-minded,
Hmm.
gullible. So I find it really, really quite heartening that if we take the Shroud as just one example, um, it's science which is actually demonstrating that the Shroud is almost certainly authentic. Certainly, most of the scientists who've studied the Shroud have come to the conclusion that it is authentic. There's little doubt about that. So all of a sudden, it's almost as if the stick that the atheist community has been using to beat people of faith with is being turned back on themselves.
Hmm.
And we're seeing this as well elsewhere. I mean, one of the things that I've taken an interest in over recent years is some of the discoveries that have been made, really, with regard to the genetic science and in microbiology.
Yeah.
Uh, and when you look at, there's some wonderful videos on YouTube which show how various different parts of cells function. How DNA is replicated, how proteins operate within a cell. I used to think proteins were just things that gave you nourishment.
Right.
I didn't
Right.
realize that at a microscopic level, cell proteins work as engines or motors. They
Yes.
deliver things around the cells. They make things happen. They're like machines. And
Yeah.
so when you actually look at the absolute complexity of the design of a cell and how
It's
these
like a whole world.
operate, yeah,
Right.
how on earth did that occur naturally?
Yeah.
How on earth could that possibly have just evolved from natural random chemical processes? It's
Yes.
and I do see as well that there are quite a lot of scientists who have recently started declaring that they've become increasingly convinced that creation was an intelligent process, not
Yes.
simply a matter of slow evolution over billions of years involving chemistry.
Well, and,
So
and even if it isn't, automatically arriving at this place of discussion of Orthodox Christianity, it's at least a step in the right direction, I think. I mean, and
mm,
I don't know, I haven't read much of his work, but I'm aware of someone like the late John Polkinghorne, your fellow countryman there, right?
yeah.
Who is just Bishop Barron brings him up a lot, and I was just looking on Amazon too earlier because he's got titles like Quarks, Chaos, and Christianity. He did the for any college students in the audience here. Those little they still make them. Those little very short introductions, from Oxford. He did the one on quantum theory.
All right.
And here's this gentleman who's also an Anglican cleric and theologian. So you just I think it's getting harder for the really kind of hardcore kind of pop atheists to just so easily dismiss theism as something that only superstitious fools can believe, because they're
Yeah.
not willing to call the guy sitting next to them at the conference, you know, who's got all these accolades in astrophysics or microbiology or whatever, a superstitious fool. He's right there. So maybe
Yeah.
that's good. It seems
I,
good.
yeah. Well, it certainly does seem possible. I mean, certainly in the UK, one of the most prominent uh, atheist is Richard Dawkins,
Yes, yeah.
and he I find it fascinating that he's got he quite often ends up having debates on YouTube with a man called John Lennox, who's a mathematician,
Yes, yes.
and a very, very clever and very, very eloquent man who is really able to, uh,
He
well,
holds his own.
he certainly he does
He's,
more than hold his own. He certainly does. And I
yeah,
must admit that people like that are my heroes at the moment. So I
yeah,
think the scientific community, who knows, whereas in the past it's been seen as the in opposition to theism,
yeah.
I think it may well be something that actually helps swing the minds of the new generations of humans that are coming after us, Mike,
Yeah.
who maybe there'll be a much more uh, and strong belief in God from those people than have been in some of the recent generations.
Well, definitely that's our hope and prayer for
It
sure.
certainly is. It certainly is.
So, so Michael, is there anything you wanted to share about the 50th anniversary here that you have coming up? And
Oh,
we'll give the links, of course, below. As I said, people can stay tuned.
well, just one final thing, really, really, Mike, because yes, next year is the 50th anniversary, and what we decided we want to do is to celebrate. It's a golden jubilee, so we're going to have a golden jubilee celebration in Blackburn, England. It's a 2-day event that we're just going through the process of planning right now. But what we're wanting to do is really celebrate the contribution of the BSTS and its members over the years, um, and also bring together some leading shroud experts from around the world to really bring people up to date with some of the most recent research. So stay tuned for that. But
Lovely.
we're planning that. It's going to be April the 11th and 12th next year, which I think is a week before Easter.
Okay. I was
So
going to ask, I was going to ask you, since it's going to be 2026 and it's, America's 250th anniversary. I was like, are you going to play a prank on us Americans and have it on 4th of July weekend? It's like, oh, you can't make me choose. Come on. No. But no, that's wonderful, Michael. And I'm thrilled to follow that and to, continue to, this wonderful, this wonderful friendship that's developed, between all of us here that I never anticipated. I just sort of, it seemed like an accident, but there are no accidents. It's been providential and a real joy to have this platform be able to be a regular spot for anyone to come and share about the shroud. I think it's really affecting people and getting them hopefully ultimately thinking more deeply about our Lord, right?
Yeah. Oh, well, Mike, and I must admit, from our point of view, to be able to use your channel to reach people, it's been absolutely wonderful to have this opportunity. For so long, it's felt like people like members of the BSTS and the members of the various different researchers over the United States. I'm sure we've all felt like lone voices crying in the wilderness, and so
Sure.
for you to give us the opportunity to reach thousands of people through your podcast, that's been absolutely wonderful. So
Yeah.
thank you so much, and thank you again for today.
Oh, it's my pleasure. God bless you, and we'll see you again soon. We'll check in.
Yeah, cheers, Mike. God bless.
Take care. I can't thank Michael enough for joining us today, and it was what a delight to chat with him. And really, we have a near and dear place in my heart for all of our friends in the UK, our friends who have done so much, especially through the British Society for the Turin Shroud, to promote this wonderful work, this investigation, and serious inquiry into the shroud. Taking a serious look at the evidence and really considering it and discussing it, and above all things, drawing us hopefully closer to a relationship with Jesus, who is the way, the truth, and the life. That's what this is really all about. So definitely check out the links below. Their website is outstanding. You got a little taste of it there. I was not aware of it actually before he came on and shared that with us. So that was really exciting, exclusive here. So thank you so much for stopping by today. And until next time, don't forget to wonder. Take care.